is the gospel message, and what is my part in making that a reality? Because there's the concept of the gospel on the one hand, and then there's the reality of the gospel and how it actually works on the other, right? We all get behind the gospel in concept. The question that I want you to be thinking about this morning, and y'all get what time? The concept we're all behind. But it's a whole other matter when we start talking about what we might say is the practical application of the gospel. And many times it's not that we're reticent to share the gospel with people, except from the standpoint that, we're not real sure exactly what's the appropriate way to do that, and especially in today's political climate, where so many people are so hostile to it. It's not just that they don't personally subscribe to it. They don't want us to say it in their hearing, right? And so it's a climate of hostility to religious teachings, and particularly Christianity, I think, that we haven't really experienced in this country within our lifetimes. So I think we're seeing something different, and it's probably going to be a reality and a fact of life for us from now on. But it does raise some interesting questions. That's really what I want to explore with you this morning. The question is this: what do I do with the gospel message as an individual Christian? Right? Not what do we expect Ted and the elders to do with it. Not what should Chris and the deacons do with it. Not what should Mike and the ministry staff do with it. But what do I, as a member of Boise Church of Christ, what's my job? What am I supposed to be doing here? What is God, when God's looking down on me from heaven, what is He expecting me to do here? We talked a little bit last night, those of you who were able to attend. We talked about how that a lot of times Jesus had more issue with people that weren't necessarily actively doing terrible bad things. These weren't axe murderers and crazy sex perverts and this kind of stuff. These were just people who were just kind of like a knot on a log. They're just kind of there. And the three examples, real quick, I'm going to preach last night's sermon, but the three examples I used were from Matthew 25. The foolish virgins. What was their great sin? Well, their sin was they didn't do anything. Instead of being ready to go when they were needed, they weren't. Well, what about the one-talent man? What was his great sin? What did he do wrong? Did he embezzle the money that he was given? Did he go take it down to the casino and gamble it away? What did he do that was so terrible? He brought the man's money back to him. Well, what he did was he squandered his opportunity. Right? In other words, he did nothing. He just did nothing. The goats in the parable of the sheep and the goats. Well, what did the goats do that was so terrible? Nothing. But there was need there, and they just ignored it. Now, that's what got Jesus' hackles up. It was that we've been given this set of tools to work with, and so many times it's like our kids. Okay, those of you with children, I'm sure there's several in this audience that fit this demographic. How many times, mom, she does load laundry. And she can take that laundry basket full of clothes and set it right there in front of the door of her child's room. Right? Those of you that are mothers understand this. Your child will come open the door of their room and step over those clothes to get out. All right? Some of y'all had this experience. I can see it in your eyes. Right? Now, how much clearer a message could it be when you sit the basket of clothes in front of the door, where the only way to get out is either to bring them in and put them away, or to step over them? And yet, an hour later, she said, "You put away those clothes?" Now, mothers, all right, I'm going to ask you. Here we go, all at once. Here's what they're going to say. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. What clothes? What clothes? You didn't tell me to put away any clothes. You ever think God feels that way? I gave you stuff to do. What'd you do? What stuff? What stuff? I don't know what you're talking about. I heard a story one time that illustrates what I'm talking about. The story was told that there was a passenger train, Amtrak or whatever, they kind of got this record, the passenger train that derailed. And it was terrible. They had emergency agencies from all over the country that were coming in there and trying to untangle this mess, and tracks littered with debris and bodies and everything else. One of the first aid workers that arrived found a man that was a little out of it, had blood on his head. He was kind of wandering in amongst the wreckage, and he's mumbling to himself. Well, she got him, she sat him down, she began to bandage him up, treat his wounds, and the man was, and she thought he was delirious, but he kept mumbling, and finally she leaned in until she could hear it, and he said, if I only had my tools, if I only had my instruments. And she didn't really know what he was talking about, but she didn't have time to mess around. She had other people she was trying to triage and to treat. And so she goes on around and begins to work with other people. Well, the day passes, the casualties eventually are evacuated, and finally she is ready to end her shift and go. And so, but as she's leaving the scene, she notices this man again. She sees him, and so she went back over to him to kind of just check on him, but also a little bit out of curiosity. And she said, when I saw you earlier, I heard you repeating, if I only had my instruments, if I only had my, what did can you tell me what were you talking about? I mean, what was that about? He said, I'm a doctor. And he said, as I looked around at all this carnage around me, I kept thinking to myself, I could save some of these people. I know what to do for them if I only had some tools to work with. He had no medical supplies, no bandages, none of the thing, of something to stop bleeding with, and so forth and so on. And so it was this sense of desperation and frustration. Now, the reason I told you that story is to tell you this. Do you think God ever looks down at us in a world full of lost people? Jesus said the fields are white and the harvest. In other words, we're deep in opportunity to do something meaningful with our lives that makes a difference in the world. And do you feel like God ever looks down at us in that situation and says, wow, if I only had some useful tools down here to work with? All right, the frustration. Now, I think there's one thing that sometimes holds us back from utilizing the opportunities of making the most of the gospel message. And it's, there's different things in different situations that sometimes may hinder us or conspire to hinder us. But it really comes down to this. We aren't, we can't do everything. So maybe it's the problem's not having enough opportunity. Sometimes it's deciding, trying to sift amongst all the different things, because we can't be everywhere. We can't spend on everything. Every great project, we can't do. We're like Regis Philbin. I'm only one man, after all. And so, what is it that God really has in mind amongst all the possibilities? And my thought is this, and I won't tell you the story, it's very cliche, you've probably all heard it anyway, but about the starfish. And the man walked along the beach after a big storm, starfish everywhere, and he goes on and he picks one up. Okay, that's kind of how we are. We're like the fellow trying to toss back starfish. And somebody sees us and says, well, what are you doing that for? You can't make any difference. And he just ignores and goes along and picks up another, tosses it back, and it's like, well, I did it for that one. That's the way we've got to think. I can't do everything. That's true. It's true. I just admit it. But I can do something. One of the things that frustrates me, and I think I probably speak on behalf of ministers in general when I say this, one of the things that frustrates us as ministers, working with congregations, people we counsel with, whatever, is that people don't realize just how valuable and critical they are. we don't appreciate ourselves, let alone the capabilities of people around us. We don't even realize what we've got to work with. And here's what I'm talking about. Each one of us has been individually designed by God for a purpose down here on earth. Now, if time permitted, and it really doesn't, so bear with me and forgive me. And if we see light on Scripture, I promise you we've got plenty of it. We'll get more of it later on. But it's as scriptural as it gets. God had something in mind when He made you. You are not the hood ornament on God's car. Okay? Let me say that again. You're not a hood ornament. You're not just some, you're not the fuzzy thing that hangs down from God's mirror. God designed you with a purpose in mind. He has something specific there for you. And whether you ever come to the realization of that and ever really fulfill your purpose, or as Maslow said it, self-actualize. Whether you do that or not is a whole other matter. But don't say, well, there's nothing there. There's nothing to do. Because there is. Let me share some things just in the next few minutes as time permits that I've noticed about opportunities. First of all, opportunities are not all the same. They come in, I guess you might say, different flavors. Let me tell you the four that I noticed that you seem to break down into. First of all, there are sustained opportunities. For example, everybody that's here today is going to have an opportunity to encourage another believer. Another believer. That's one of the things that Hebrews chapter, there's some scripture, Hebrews chapter 10 tells us is our duty. We're supposed to gather together specifically for the purpose of encouraging one another. Bear something in mind. You didn't come here today so we can, quote, have church. That's not the reason. Because let's just think about it. You're going to hear a gospel message here one now. But you could have stayed home and heard one. You could have got on YouTube and heard a gospel message. You didn't have to come here to hear a gospel message. All right? The internet's full of it. In a few minutes, we'll pray. But you didn't have to come here to pray. You pray anywhere. Right? You pray in your car. You pray driving down the road. You can pray eating the breakfast. You can pray when you're in the shower washing your hair. You pray anywhere. That's the beauty of the way God designed that system. So you don't have to come to church for that. In a few minutes, we're going to sing songs and praise the Lord. You don't have to come to church for that. You can do that anywhere. When I was a kid, we'd be driving down the road. My dad's a preacher. He used to be a song leader. I think preachers mostly frustrated song leaders anyway. But he'd get up, we'd sing. By the way, a little heads up for you. Next hour, we're going to talk about the 5 secrets of happy people. One of the secrets of happiness, maybe counterintuitively, is that we don't get happy and then sing, or get happy and then smile, or get happy and then laugh. In fact, the best way to be happy is start by singing, smiling, laughing, and then the happiness will follow. Now, that's not the way we've kind of been taught to expect that to work, but it really does work that way. And so, God has given you a mechanism to take control of your happiness, but you have to come back the next hour and hear the rest of it. All right, back to the presentation, the 4 presentations of opportunity. First one, sustained. You're going to have some of those sustained opportunities this morning. Second one is what I call seasonal. I'm going to talk about the seasons of the year. It's occasionally present. But predictable. For example, not to be morbid, but people die. They die, and when they die, they leave family and friends, loved ones behind, and those people are hurting. And there's not a lot you can do. There's not a lot you can say. You can't take away the pain. But as a great English literary figure said, they also serve who only stand and wait, which is just another way of saying just being there for people when they're hurting. It matters. And I'll go you one better than that. Not only does it matter, that's kind of a crisis period in personal life. If nothing else, it's an emotional crisis time. And I promise you this is true. the things that we do to reach out to people during those emotional crisis times in their life matter to them a lot more. They count a lot more than all of the goodwill that we might try to convey by saying, hey, how you doing, as we greet them on Sunday morning. Right? Ask yourself this question, those of you, especially those of you that are older and had a lot of life experiences. Look back over and kind of review in your mind the occasions in your life when you were really feeling at a low point. And think back to the people who, during that time when you were experiencing this low point, reached out to you. And even when, there again, they couldn't take that away from you, they couldn't make you just, make it all better, wave the magic wand. But yet you knew, and they conveyed to you that they cared. And that's really all that it took. And to this day, you'll never forget that they did that for you. Whether it was, somebody in the hospital, maybe you, whether it's there again, a funeral, and it's there again, you can't fix it, but you can let people know you care, and that's got a magic all its own. It really does. That's occasional. Next one is situational. Situational is this. It's periodically present, not necessarily always predictable. For example, let's say you've got a co-worker or a fellow student in class or whatever, knows you're a Christian, and if they don't, by the way, well, that's a whole other lesson. We'll work on that later. But that recognizes you for who and what you are. And they've got questions. If nothing else, they're curious about what you believe. They're curious as to why you do the things you do, or, in many cases, why you don't do what you don't do. And so at some point, if you're the kind of person that Jesus wants you to be, you're going to have an opportunity to interact with this person in a way that it's meaningful. It matters. And something gets through, and then something filters to them that says, hey, I want to interact. I want to know, what do you think about this? What do you think that the Bible teaches about this subject, whatever? Now, that used to happen in the Church of Christ a lot. We used to have a reputation well outside the Churches of Christ for being the go-to person if you had a Bible question. I'm not sure, and I'm not trying to insult anybody of any generation, but I'm just not sure that we see as much of that anymore as we used to. And one of the things I've noticed is that by and large, I'm going to make a generalization. If this doesn't fit your profile, please forgive me. But by and large, we today do not know the Bible as well as our grandparents did. You all believe that?
Amen. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, why do you think that's true? I think it's a very simple answer. It's a very simple answer. And it may not be one that we want to hear, but it really comes down to this. They knew the Bible because they constantly devoted themselves to studying it. They read it frequently. And I'm not up here stumping, read your Bible every day and then read this many verses and get on this schedule or something like that. I'm just saying, the Bible is the greatest tool God ever gave humanity to understand what we're supposed to be doing and how to live a happy life, how to be successful in a spiritual way, how to live with Him for all eternity. All the important questions are in here, the answers to them. And yet, and bear this in mind, and this is true despite the era of this, this is only as good as how well it's been absorbed up here. When that coworker or that fellow student comes to you and asks you that Bible question, the chances that you're going to have a Bible in your hand at that moment are next to zero. Right? If you're the one guy in school that carries a Bible around with him in his hand all day long, the chances they want to even ask you that question probably go way down. Right? The most important Bible you own can't collect dust because it's the one in your mind. It's not enough to have the Bible in your hand. You need to have the Bible in your head. Right? But now that takes work. It takes commitment. The final category of opportunities that we face are singular opportunities, and arguably these are the most important. Here's why. Because they are uniquely present. They're not constantly present. They're not periodically present. These are ones that come once in a lifetime, and once they're gone, they're gone. They're gone for good. Probably the greatest, here's my confession this morning. I spent 8 years in the military. One of the greatest regrets that I've got is that there were so many opportunities I was presented with to witness for Christ, to share with people gospel messages, to comfort people who were hurting, to direct people that were really lost, and so forth. And I'm not saying that I passed them all up. I did do some ministry, counseling, various things when I was in service, but not nearly enough. And I look back and I can kick myself every day for the opportunities that I know that were there that I failed to take advantage of. You know, people that I could have helped, I really could have helped. And yet, for whatever reason, and I think, and let me direct this to our young people, and by the way, thank you guys for being here this morning. You know, you're young, you're trying to fit in, you know, whether this is high school or military or whatever, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to figure out where you're supposed to be in life, and a lot of those kinds of issues. I understand. All right, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I understand. It's like the Japanese say that the nail that sticks up is the ones that gets rounded over. You know, we don't want to be that nail. But the thing is, though, is this. God has called us to be special people. We're supposed to be special. We're supposed to stick out. Right? We're supposed to shine like diamonds in the mud in a world that's so messed up as the one that you and I live in. If we don't stick out as being any different, ask yourself this question. Are we any different? Are we any different? Now, don't think that's a frivolous question, because it's not. The Bible teaches we're supposed to be and this is the word that was used, a peculiar people. And yet, if somebody describes you as, well, you know, Ted's peculiar. He's peculiar. Do you think that'd be a compliment? If Ted overheard me describing him as being peculiar, you think he'd take that as a compliment? He's peculiar. By the way, I hope y'all don't think that of Ted, but I'm just saying, you know. He'd take it. I'd pick on it. And yet, God didn't mean it in a derogatory way. God meant, you know, that courtesy of our New Testament writers. He meant that in a good way. To be peculiar is to be unique. It's to be unusual. Is to be something that's different and outside the norm, not in a perverse or weird or creepy kind of a way, but rather in a way that is just very uncommon. You just don't expect to see that. And so it's a good thing. It's a good thing when it's combined with that gospel message and the intent that's behind it. Now, let me mention just real quick. Man, this clock's so fast. You know, and parents. Right now, you're in not all opportunities are just kind of like lightning flashes that hit things and instantaneously gone. Although, looking back, it may seem that way. One of the opportunities that you've got right now that's one that fits into this last category of being a unique opportunity. It's one that, I say I've got 4 kids. I've got 2 of them that are outside this, and 2 of them are still inside this. Right? I've got 2 that are grown, raising kids of their own. I've got 2 that aren't to that stage yet. And with those last 2 that still live in my house, I've got unique opportunities. I've got a 16-year-old daughter. She's pretty little daughter, boys. She's pretty. 16. Don't get any ideas. She's not a Christian yet. And I figure I've got about 2 more years before this opportunity. I'm not saying I won't be able to talk to her after this. I'm not saying there'll never be an occasion to try to work together or to share that with her. I don't think I'm not trying. Right now, I jokingly said this yesterday with somebody. I think Bill probably at the student center. You know, she and I are at this stage in our relationship where she thinks I am the dumbest guy in the whole wide world. There's nobody that is stupider than her daddy. He doesn't know anything. You know, and because she is 16 now, and she's so big and almost grown, I can't tell her anything because she knows everything. Right? So we're kind of on 2 very disparate planes of existence. We just kind of cross paths occasionally. But there's an opportunity that's there. You know, I've kind of got a captive audience with her right now. You know, eventually I'll have to hope that she'll pick up the phone when I call her. Right now, I just go to the room, you know, hey, what you doing in there? And so she's there at home. And it's a fleeting opportunity. It's not going to always be there. Let me move a little bit faster because I'll run out of time and won't get the punchline. There's 4 challenges that accompany opportunity. I don't care what kind of opportunity it is. Some of this is going to apply to. The first one is, and this is the one we just talked about, time sensitivity. Life moves on. And if we're not ready, as Paul put it to Timothy, to be instant in season and out of season, which by the way just means simply when it's convenient and we can schedule it and all those kind of things, and when it just is right there and you take it or leave it, do something about it or let it slide. And so that's the nature of opportunity. And so we have to take advantage of opportunities when they're there, whether it's convenient or not. I mentioned, maybe going to see somebody in the hospital that's in a health crisis, wreck, whatever, right? If you wait till the next week when you've got time to fit that into your schedule, you've blown that opportunity. Then it's too late. They need you now. 2 o'clock in the morning ministry counts quadruple of 2 o'clock in the afternoon ministry. Right? It just does. I promise you it does. Next was resource intensiveness. Many opportunities require a significant commitment in resources on our part. Now, you may be thinking I'm thinking about money. Well, not necessarily. It may go back to rule number 1, time sensitive. It may take more time than you feel like you've got to devote to it. But let me just remind you of one thing. I'm not saying this to be smart alecky. The fact of the matter is that there's the same number of tick marks on your watch as there are on mine. Some of y'all are squinting like you don't quite get that. You've got 24 hours in your day, but I have 24 hours in my day. There are 60 minutes in your hour, but I've got 60 minutes in my hour. Is this sinking in yet? You have the exact... See, God, in His ultimate sense of parity and equity and fairness, has designed it so you have the exact same number of seconds and minutes and hours and weeks and months and years, as long as you're alive, as anybody else does. So for me to stand and say, well, I would do that, but I don't, and here's what we'll say. But I don't have time. That's just really not true. Now, you may or may not want to make time. That may not be a priority to you, but let's don't lie about it. I told last night, if you die at church, it counts double. Don't lie about it. Just, it's like, okay, that's not a priority for me right now. I can respect the person that says that to me. That's not a priority. I've got other things that are more important. Okay. Now, but when we say, well, I don't have time, that's an excuse. And one of the first things I was taught when I went to the Army is the maximum effective range of an excuse is 0 meters. Some of y'all get that, some of you won't. That's okay. All right. One of the reasons we miss opportunities is because opportunities are often subtly presented. They don't always look like what they are. Many times they come disguised, for example, as, work. I apologize for using that 4-letter word. I know there's ladies present, but it's not really a bad word. And there's a lot of things that can be accomplished with hard work. A lot of things that can be accomplished with hard work that can't be accomplished any other way, including with genius. One of the greatest inventors, entrepreneurs, there's a lot of categories you can fit this man into, Thomas Edison. He said, you know what genius really is? He said, genius is 99% perspiration, that's sweat, and 1% inspiration. I went to his laboratory. It's in Dearborn, Michigan. They moved it up there. I know you think it was in New Jersey, but it's not. They moved it to Dearborn, Michigan. It's there outside the Henry Ford Museum. Inside this laboratory, which was a room probably half the size of this auditorium. There were shelves from floor to ceiling, and what struck me about it was that each of these shelves was completely, totally filled with light bulbs. But now here was the interesting part. None of them worked. Now see, it's not that they've been plugged in, they went bad. None of them had ever worked. If he hadn't persevered until the 10,001 time with trying to get a filament that wouldn't burn out in the first 5 minutes that you plug this light bulb in, we'd all be sitting here by coal oil lamps right now. All right? That's just a fact. A lot of people had tried to make a light bulb in those days and were unsuccessful. And I think a lot of it was because they gave up too soon. Opportunity can look like a lot of things. And combined with this next one, which is this. Many times opportunity comes in such a way that we don't know how this is going to benefit us. And so there's kind of an unspecified, nebulous, possible remuneration. And there's some part of us that's just a smidgen mercenary that always has to ask this question and satisfy it before we move forward. And the question is this: what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Jerry Clower, who's a famous Southern comedian, once said, there is no limit to what can be done if it doesn't matter who gets the credit. All right? Who gets the credit? That's a pretty profound thought if you think about it. Most opportunities that you and I will be presented do not come with a guarantee. It's not guaranteed that if I reach out to, let's say we have a new member that comes in, and chances are, if it's not already happened this morning, chances are you'll have a visitor this morning, 2, 3, 4 more. Somebody that you haven't met before. And so here's an opportunity. There again, this is one of those singular opportunities. This person may never be back. You're going to have an opportunity to welcome this person to church, to introduce them around, to make them feel comfortable, to begin the process of assimilation. All right, by the way, for Star Trek fans, we're not talking about the board here. All right, but we want to assimilate them. We want to absorb them into our body. Not the we're eating them up a creepy way, but we want them to be part of the body of Christ, right? And so, but how does that happen? It doesn't just happen. It happens through an active plan. We need to consciously say, this is my mission today. I'm going to bring in a soul for Christ. Now, if we ask ourselves the question, what do I get out of this right now? What's in this for me? I'm going to be late. If we don't hurry up, the Baptists will beat us to the restaurant, and that kind of stuff. If that's the attitude that we take, then we're going to miss that opportunity, right? And we may never get it again. And like Esau, who blew a huge opportunity, he's a lesson in himself, of course. And later on, with tears, would have done anything in his penitence to get that opportunity back, but he never got it back. And that opportunity never came again. It was a one-time offer. And a lot of them are. Now, we've been talking about fours. I don't know why this will end up being a lesson of fours, but it is. 4 benefits that we derive from seizing opportunity. So if we've asked that question, all right, I beat you up enough on it. If we've asked the question, okay, well, what's in this for me? Let me tell you what's in for you. All right? I don't think self-interest is a bad thing. I don't think acting on self-interest is a bad thing. In fact, that's the most basic premise of survival. If we can't act in self-interest, we're not going to last very long. All right? And so we're programmed to act that way. So here's the first thing that God has given you as an incentive to find some self-interest in doing the right thing. Okay? Character development. Don't laugh. The fact of it is that, and let me use a baseball analogy. We're not going to hit every pitch that we swing at. But even the ones that we miss aren't a failure unless we don't learn anything from it. See, here's what failure is. Failure is not you tried something and it didn't work out like you thought it was going to. Edison did not fail with all those light bulbs. Each light bulb he made that didn't turn on when he flipped the switch was a light bulb that taught him something. Right? He learned something from that. He learned, if nothing else, he learned how not to do it. That's valuable information. Have you ever been benefited from knowing how not to do stuff? You know, my dad loved me. There were many occasions when he illustrated for me in an unequivocal fashion how not to do it, and not only that, why not to do it. Do I need to explain that to y'all? Do I need to explain that to the timeout generation? I never did get one of those. I would trade it, but that wasn't an option. All right, so I learned from those experiences. And so like, oh, wait, hold up now. I know what happens if I do this. Let's go a different way. All right, there's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from or if this didn't go right, to, okay, now I've learned a better way of doing things. All right, next. We, through this process, this ongoing process of swinging and missing, or swinging, then hitting, it builds spiritual ascendancy. There is a nobility. There is a glory all its own in having to struggle and to overcome in order to be successful. I want you to think about the person in your life, maybe a personal hero, let's just say. Somebody that you've admired, a Christian or church figure, or maybe a secular figure, a political leader, whatever. I've always kind of been an admirer of Teddy Roosevelt. One of the things I've admired about Teddy Roosevelt is that Teddy Roosevelt, although he was in fact born into a wealthy, well-to-do family, but he had a lot of struggles. He had a lot of health issues early on. Nobody just handed him the presidency. In fact, his own party, this is a funny one, his own party put him in as the vice president just so they could keep him from becoming president. That backfired on him because then the president got shot and he might have been president anyway. But they tried. But in those days, the vice president was just a guy that we had on the payroll, don't really know what he's supposed to do. He's just kind of there. I'd say that's still the case. I don't know. But that was the case then for sure. And yet, every time an obstacle came in front of Teddy Roosevelt, he went after it like a bulldog. And nothing was going to stop him. He was on his way one time to give a political speech, a big campaign rally, and somebody walked up to him and just shot him. Just not like they did Reagan in 1980. Just walked up to him and just shot him. And they said, oh boy, this is a terrible thing. Now we're going to rush him to the hospital and he's going to miss his speech. He said, oh no, I'm not. He went on and gave a speech. He said, I'll be later. And after the speech was all over with, and he got around and shook hands with everybody, then he let him take him to the hospital. I think that's why they called him the Bull Moose. But he was determined. There's a lot to be said for determination. And opportunity requires that we hang in there in order to realize the benefits of that. Next one. We receive earthly blessings. But now understand this about earthly blessings. God promised to bless our efforts. Okay? But here's the way it works, though. This may be the most important thing I tell you this morning. God will bless your earthly efforts. Okay? In fact, according to what I understand Scripture to say, what Jesus told, for example, in Matthew 13, about the parable of the sower, he said that when seed is sown on good ground, by the way, there was only, out of the 4 categories there's another 4. There was only one of those plots of ground that qualified as, quote, good ground. All the rest of it was wayside and thorny and stony ground, all this kind of stuff. So here it was. I'm talking faster. I've got to get it all in. The good ground was capable of producing some 30-fold, some 60, some 100. Okay, so here's a math problem for you. You went to a math class today. All right, what's 30 times 0? You get it now, aren't you? What's 60 times 0? That's got to be twice as much, right? No, that's still 0. Well, what's 100 times 0? That sounds like a big number coming out of that one, right? 3 figures. 100 times 0 is still 0. It's still 0. And so if God multiplies my effort and my faith and my work and all the good things that He's given me that I'm using, and He multiplies it. But I'm only putting zero effort in. It doesn't matter how much He blesses it, it's still going to be a zero. However small of a contribution that you're able to make. And let me talk money for just a second. We haven't talked money, this is not a money sermon. But think about the poor widow that gave the 2 mites. Right? 2 mites. 2 mites isn't much. But now let's think about this. 2 mites. In her lifetime, 2 mites would buy about 1 meal. Right? About 1 meal. That's how close she was to being flat broke. She was 1 meal away from flat broke. And then didn't know what she was doing. Now somebody may think, this is the dumbest woman in history. She's down to 1 meal from starvation, and here she is. What's she going to do instead of going out and find some other way to invest that money? She's going to give that into the treasury. And yet, can you think of anybody in history that ever made a better investment than what she did? She gave 1 meal's worth of money and got eternal salvation out of it. I'm not saying she bought her way into heaven. That's not what, okay, please don't take that away from this. I'm just making a point. Here was a lady who realized she couldn't afford not to make this investment. She couldn't afford, let me say it a different way. She couldn't afford not to make this investment. And so that's a whole different paradigm. That's a very different perspective. I guess what the bottom line of it is, give something God to bless. Give Him something to bless. We got like 1 minute. All right. The best way we can capitalize on opportunity, and I'll give you a little acronym, maybe it'll help you remember, is by reaping, R-E-A-P, reap a harvest. Now here's how we reap. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to recognize that we've got an opportunity in front of us. If you don't, chances are you're not going to do anything about it. Secondly, we need to evaluate this. In other words, what can I do to help? Right? What is this opportunity? What would God like me to do about this? So we need to go about it smart. Work's great, but there's 2 different kinds of work. There's hard work and there's smart work. I'd much rather see us working smart. I think you guys do, by the way. My hat's off to you. Okay, but in other words, do something that's not just so we can say, well, we're working hard, we're putting effort in, we're really sweating. We put in the sweat equity. But rather say, okay, here's where we can really make a difference, right? With the resources we've got to work with. So we evaluate. The next thing we do is we apply biblical principles to it. Now see, there's a lot of organizations that are out there that are doing great works in a sense, and yet in many cases because of another whole lesson, but because they're not going about it in a biblical way, using God's instructions, in many cases it hinders the product of their efforts. And so we need to be sure that we're following the instruction manual, not as a last resort, not after everything else has failed, but as their model from the very beginning. And then finally, we need to, and then we alluded to this a minute ago, to persevere to fruition. It's not a question of if we encounter difficulties along the way. We're going to. It's not going to be easy. Let's don't just sell this as get John Conley's rose-colored glasses out and divorce ourselves from reality and disconnect. It's like, oh well, God just bless this, and pie in the sky. We need to be smart, but we also need to take the attitude that we're in for the long haul. That there's no shortcuts. There's no easy, quick solutions to this. That's not how God operates, and so that's not what He's planning to bless. So don't get discouraged. Hang in there. Continue to do what you can do, and in the end, we trust God for the harvest. And that whatever it is, whether it's 1 or 2 or 10 or 100, and then what He blesses 100 times that. That's where success comes from. Thank you. We're out of time.